Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Horsepower Obsessed. Today we're going to talk about the C8 Corvette and the fact that Motor Trend actually came out and admitted that they botched that dyno result and what they did wrong. Alright guys, so as you know, I've already kind of covered the fact that Motor Trend has put the C8 Corvette up on the dyno and got some fantastic dyno results from it. The problem is the results were maybe a little too fantastic. There was a lot of doubt and a lot of speculation circling the whole thing because a lot of people weren't believing the fact that a 495 horsepower car could be dynoing almost 600 horsepower at the wheels. Now, as you guys know, car manufacturers constantly underrate their engines. That's not anything new. We've talked about this 100 times, so it's not anything to talk about again. But in this case, Motor Trend actually came right out and used the words botched. They want to let us know the numbers were definitely incorrect. So no, we're not looking at some sort of super underrated factory vehicle here. The Corvette C8 is still going to make 495 horsepower at the crank and probably around 470 to 480 at the wheels after drivetrain loss. Of course, we won't know the actual numbers until we get another company to put it up on the dyno, or one of us gets one in our hands and we put it on the dyno. But at this point, Motor Trend has flat out said they botched it, they know it. But here's what happened. So as we discussed in the previous video, during the initial testing of the 2020 C8 Corvette, Motor Trend took the opportunity on their final day with the car to put it on a Mustang dyno and see what kind of power it made. The results, of course, were nothing less than breathtaking. Anybody who is looking forward to this car saw the near 600 horsepower at the wheels and probably fainted. But of course, it wasn't real. Now, because Motor Trend found that it was creating much more than the 495 horsepower that GM advertised, they kind of ran with it, blasted it all over the internet, and of course, got everybody's hopes up. Now, for those of you who haven't seen that previous video or read that Motor Trend article, the first dyno result that Motor Trend got on their dyno was 558 horsepower and 515 pound-feet of torque at the wheels, which means the engine was offering an estimated 656 horsepower and 606 pound-feet of torque at the crank, which is, of course, a far cry from the LT2's SAE certified 495 horsepower and 470 pound-feet of torque. They ran multiple times in 5th gear and generated similar results. So when they ran it again in 6th gear, the number came in closer to 478 horsepower and 536 pound-feet of torque, which is still higher than what the car should be creating. I'm definitely not complaining. If those numbers were real, I would be totally fine with it, but I had a pretty good feeling we were looking at something that was slightly over-exaggerated or tests that weren't done exactly right. After a couple dyno runs, Motor Trend realized they were consistently getting the same numbers, so they just assumed they had a factory monster. The car was going to create a bunch of horsepower over what GM was actually quoting. And of course, like I said, they were wrong. Now, while Corvette owners were definitely appreciative for the extra horsepower, some of us stopped to actually ponder how it's possible that this car would be that underrated. One of the people who really started to doubt this and started to give you good science behind the reason for his doubt was Jason Camisa, who is actually the person that wrote the C8 Corvette review for Road and Track. We talked about this in a previous video, which I'll link up at the top right here. I don't want to harp on it for too long, but basically Jason was the first one to use a couple different equations to figure out that the C8 Corvette's horsepower could not possibly be that high, based on its 0 to 60 time and its quarter mile time. So now fast forward to today. Motor Trend actually admits their dyno operator had selected 2 dyno settings that were incorrect. Motor Trend actually says, quote unquote, "Now we've learned that our dyno operator selected 2 dyno settings that were incorrect. One is a key parameter that had yet to be released for the C8 and so was estimated from C7 data. That is road load horsepower at 50 miles per hour. This factor incorporates friction and aero drag and can be measured empirically by conducting coast down tests. But because dyno testing the C8 was a last minute fill-in on our schedule, when real miles per gallon testing proved impossible on our last day with the C8, we had no opportunity to measure it. The dyno operators used 12.6 when Chevrolet has informed us the correct factor for our Z51 should have been 15.4. But the bigger boo-boo was that the dyno was also set to assume all-wheel drive. These two factors conspired to make the dyno believe that the Corvette's powertrain was overcoming way more inertia than it really was, which led to inflated results. Sadly, there is apparently no way to virtually rerun the test in the computer with corrected parameters, so we simply must get another C8 back and run the test again. Now, this is actually pretty interesting because I remember being asked the question very often why the dyno had all four wheels spinning. There are a lot of dynos out there that are all-wheel drive setups for cars that have all-wheel drive, like STIs and Evos and things like that. But even though the front wheels are spinning does not mean that the car is actually driving the front wheels. It's the whole dyno setup spins all four wheels at the same time. I've actually been on one of those dynos in a rear-wheel drive car and had it spin the front wheels as well. So it's not anything abnormal, and that's what I actually said to everybody asking that question. But apparently, Motor Trend actually had it set up to assume all-wheel drive, which is kind of odd that they wouldn't have known to turn that off. But anyway, Motor Trend goes on to say that the torch red Corvette road test results were so impressive that they wanted to find out some proof of its actual horsepower. And they attempted to do so utilizing the road dyno pools from their drag strip runs. The magazine says they came up with the car producing 425 horsepower just past 6,300 RPM. A similar road dyno test of a Sebring Orange C8 Corvette produces a result of 465 horsepower and 412 pound-feet of torque. Now, these numbers are definitely much more accurate if you ask me. With the car producing 495 at the crank, while losing less than probably 10% through the drivetrain, you're looking at around 470 horsepower to the wheels. Motor Trend concludes that more dyno and track testing is required until they can get a baseline of what the car is actually making. Hopefully next time they get the car on the dyno, it's on a dyno jet and not a Mustang dyno. There's way too many variables on a Mustang dyno that have to be entered in exactly correct for readings to come out accurately, as you can see here. Anyway, guys, I'm sure none of you are overly surprised to hear this information, but it is news for the C8, and I wanted to make sure you guys are all in the know, because there are a few people out there who actually believe that this car was making over 600 horsepower at the wheels. And of course, Motor Trend just kind of dropped a bomb on those guys by saying, yeah, that's not legit. One last piece of information is going to come from a couple different sources reporting that the C8 Corvette is again delayed. So as you guys know, the UAW's 40-day strike against General Motors has had some negative impacts. We were originally supposed to see this car begin production in December and have the first cars hitting the dealer lots in mid-January at the latest. Now we're looking at February before production even begins. So we may not even see the cars until late February, early March on the actual dealer lots. And if you guys are as pumped about this car as I am, that kind of hurts. I was hoping to have the car as soon as possible. Yes, taking delivery of it in mid-January isn't ideal for anywhere that you live, especially me here in Pennsylvania, but I'll be honest with you, I was planning on putting that thing through its paces in the snow, and now I'm not sure if I'm going to get that opportunity. So it looks like we're all going to be waiting a little while because of that strike for this car. Anyway, guys, that's going to do it for today's video. So if you liked what you saw, give me a big thumbs up. If you have any questions about the C8 Corvette or anything we talk about on this channel, shoot them in the comments section down below or send me an email, horse.power.obsessed@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to answer them for you. Let me know what your thoughts are on the whole dyno test for this C8 and the fact that Motor Trend admits that they botched it. Are you as upset as I am about the car being delayed until February now? Let me know down below. If you guys haven't subscribed yet, please do. I have loads of C7 and very soon to be C8 Corvette content coming for you that you are definitely not going to want to miss. And as always, guys, I will catch you in the next upload.